Hey family, my name is Richard.
And I'm Brittni.
And we are the founders of lovealwaysministries.com. And we want to say thank you so much for tuning into this channel. And if you guys could you make sure to subscribe to this channel so you can stay updated with everything that's going on right here on this channel.
And if you'd like to partner with our ministry, you can do so by heading over to lovealwaysministries.com/donate to make a donation today. Or you can give by snail mail. Just look for the website at the bottom of every page on our website. And if you haven't checked out our book, A Call to Purity, what are you waiting for? It is available on Amazon or on our website. Make sure that you pick yourself up a copy today. It is changing lives all over the world. We love you guys. We can't do what we do without you. So thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your support. And thank you for tuning into our channel. We love you guys so much, and we pray God's blessings over you. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Let's Talk Purity podcast with Brittni and Richard De La Mora. This podcast is brought to you by Edifi.app. If you're watching on YouTube, you probably see that my husband's not here today. We are missing him, but we had some babysitter issues, so he will be back with us later on this month. But I do have a very special guest joining us today, Nick Liberto. He is the executive director of provenministries.org and thesextalk.com. Our ministry has partnered with him. You'll see on our website at lovealwaysministries.com/thesextalk that we are now affiliate members to promote his course, because we firmly believe that this is something that parents need to have with their children, is the sex talk. And could be sometimes like embarrassing. You might feel a little bit mortified to have those uncomfortable conversations, but it is so needed, because in today's day and age with technology, if you don't have these conversations with your children, then pornography is going to have these conversations with your children. I recently had a friend tell me that her daughter was exposed to porn, and she's 6 years old. Another friend told me her daughter was watching porn, and she's 11 years old. And so it's everywhere. Children are getting exposed, and so we need to have these talks before porn has those talks. So Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited that you're here.
Brittni, I'm honored to be here as well. This conversation has really been a long time coming. And kind of like you mentioned, we're really passionate about this subject as well, because we want parents to get on the offense and to lean in with their kids so that they're protected and so that porn doesn't teach them, because that is a nightmare situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And the statistics say that 51% of kids between the ages of 11 and 13 have already seen porn. So as parents, if we don't want porn to teach our children about sex, how and when should we start having the sex talk?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that story you told of the 6-year-old being exposed really does break our hearts. Really, what we're trying to encourage parents to do, because of that story, and the average age of exposure, I think, is as low as 8 years old now. We need parents to be equipping and protecting their children at earlier and earlier ages. And so really what we're trying to say is, hey, you can give your kids a defense around this topic. And we say to begin the conversation around the age of 6 years old with just basic biology, anatomical terms, and God's design. Yeah. And I'll tell you a story kind of as to why. So in the course, we tell this story as well, but there was a 6 or 7 year old girl being babysat by her older cousin. And then when mom and dad got home from their date, the little girl said, "Hey, I don't like it when Johnny pokes me with his stick." And right, like, she didn't have the word penis, and her parents hadn't told her what that was. And so that went on for years before the parents finally realized what it was. And so again, you're really equipping and protecting your children by starting at that age, because, you could be the best parent in the world, but, cell phones are everywhere. Your kids might be at a sleepover, a family friend, you never know. And so we're really trying to say, hey, we want to create a culture in your home where your kids are going to feel safe and come and tell you anything.
Yeah.
And that's what we want parents to be doing with their children. So when they start these conversations at an early age, their children will feel comfortable to come and ask mom and dad if they see something that makes them feel uncomfortable or other things like that.
Yeah, so you're saying that parents should have these talks with not just their boys, but their daughters as well. Because, see, most people in our ministry, we find that most people think that porn is a men's issue. So, should parents only be talking to boys about this, or?
So, unfortunately, that's another misnomer that only men struggle with this issue. The
Mm-hmm.
statistics bear that out. Over the last 10 years, women consuming pornography has exponentially grown to the point now where I would say it's probably almost equal in our, Gen Z, maybe even in millennials. And so yeah, at that point, no, it's not just mom and dad engaging with the son. It's, both of your children. If you have a boy or a girl, right, whoever they are, they need to be equipped. Now, of course, the conversation will look a little bit different,
Yeah.
but part of the course, it really encourages parents, like, we don't take a prescriptive approach.
Mm-hmm.
We're saying, hey, your kids, you know them better than anyone, and you care about them more than anyone else. So we're going to give you all the tools you could possibly need to have these talks well from the age of 6 to 16 plus. And we're just going to encourage and equip you to do that regular, early, often. And so, yeah, no, this isn't just a guy's issue. Girls need to be equally, encouraged and protected and cared for in this way, right? Because if you don't have conversations, they might think when they start dating, when they start becoming aroused or attracted to boys, like they're not going to understand what's going on. And that kind of goes back to another reason we want parents to be more open about this is because God made sex.
Yeah.
And there's no reason that think of anything else God has made. Why would we not be able to talk about it? And
Yeah.
so God has given us all the things we need to know about sex in scripture. And so there's no reason to shy away from this topic with your kids in age appropriate ways.
Why do you think that sex has become just such an awkward topic for parents to have with their children?
There's probably a lot of reasons. I've thought about that quite a bit. I think there's definitely a generational component.
Mhm.
The sexual revolution happened in the 60s and the 70s,
Mhm.
free love, free sex. And then, we had birth control things coming out at that time. So culturally, a whole lot of stuff shifted. And I think now we are not, even you and I, we're not raised in a generation or in a culture that is open about this. It has shame, it has stigma. There's like, oh, that's something that happens behind closed doors, we don't talk about that. And the purity movement gets a whole lot of bashing these days. I think they had a lot of good intention, their execution was a little bit poor.
Mhm.
But we've learned, and I think coming out the other side now, we've learned that not addressing this issue is not working.
Yeah.
And because we can, I mean, that literally is all that our world is talking about right now is sex and
Mhm.
sexuality.
Yeah.
And so we need to equally lean in as parents and equip our children just to not be afraid of it. And if you're a parent listening to this and you grew up in that world where it is really awkward and it is really hard to even imagine
Mhm.
having these conversations, there's no easy answer for you other than we are going to walk alongside of you. Love Always Ministries is going to walk alongside of you and encourage you. And this course will help make it more comfortable. And it's kind of like ripping off the Band-Aid. Once you start, it'll get easier. And then you kind of make it a system, every couple months, you find a way to bring it up with your children. You're paying, it might be music that they're listening to, and you might hear the word sexy in
Yeah.
music, right? Because that's everywhere. And you might just be like, hey, do you know what that means? Like, what does sexy mean? And
Yeah.
your child might be 7 or 8, 9 years old, and it's a great time to enter the conversation there. You could enter it in a million different places, but we just want you to do it as early and as often as you can and make
Yep.
it normal in the home. And one
Yes.
thing we've seen work really well is if you create that culture and you say, hey kids, like mommy and daddy are always going to be proud if you come and ask us questions about this,
Yeah.
or if you ever feel uncomfortable about something, we're going to be really glad and proud of you for coming and telling us about that. And if you give your children that defense, then they're going to be equipped anywhere they might go in life.
Yeah, I love that. So it's actually not an embarrassing thing. It's an empowering thing. If you can just cross that line where it's like embarrassment is here and then empowering is actually on the other side. Not only are you as a parent going to be empowered, but your children are going to be empowered too, because they're going to learn the hard things and they're going to learn that mommy and daddy are a safe place to come to. I can talk to them about these things versus, ooh, like we don't really talk about that in our house, so I'm just gonna go ask my friends about it. Like, you don't want them to ask their friends about it. That was where I was in life. Like, when I was growing up as a young teen, even like 11, 12 years old, I was asking my friends about those kinds of things. That didn't lead me down the best path. So parents, we want to have these conversations. Go to lovealwaysministries.com/the sex talk so that you can take on this course, so that you can be equipped to have these conversations with your children. So what kinds of things have you heard that children are being exposed to or being taught in porn? Like just through the work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, so that's another reason that we want to equip parents is because the things that children are being taught from pornography is just horrible.
Horrendous.
It's yeah, it's objectification of women, it's treating the body like a piece of meat for pleasure. It's all sorts of twisting that which is good and that which is true. I mean, even that, I mean, that bears out in my own story, right? Because what I thought I knew of sex versus what pornography told me is totally different. And I
Yeah.
think we've gotten better at telling that story in the 21st century a little bit, where pornography is this fake, airbrushed, experience. And, I'm sure you've heard of that Nobel Peace Prize where the gentleman won because he basically helped butterflies or determined that butterflies could be more attracted to fake plastic butterflies than real female butterflies. And that was an experiment to say super
Wow.
novelty and super stimulus, i.e., to something like pornography, which is super dopamine producing,
Yes.
super unique, and super stimulating, can kind of hijack our brains. And so in our course, one of the things that we're really wanting to equip parents to know and to prepare them for is it's not if your children will be exposed, it's when.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of our world. And so if you can come to terms with that, you almost get more excited to lean in as a parent, because for me, with my two young boys, I am making it my mission to prepare them for the god awful day when they get exposed to hardcore pornography somewhere where I am not, where I can't protect them, where they are going to be equipped and prepared to respond appropriately.
Yeah.
And they're going to know right away that dad said if we ever saw anything like this, that we can come and we can talk to him and mom about it. And in our course, there's a really cool definition that you can give your children at a young age for what pornography is, that our friend Matt Fradd shares. And it's very simply, it's if you see any pictures or videos or even in real life of individuals showing things of their body, showing parts of their bodies that their bathing suits would normally cover.
Yeah.
And if that ever happens, you can always come and tell mommy and daddy. If you did, we'd be very proud of you, and we would be there for you. And so just that alone is going to give you, you haven't harmed your child by telling them that,
Yeah.
but they now know there's this thing called pornography, and this is what it would look like. And they know mom and dad are safe. If I ever see that, I can come and talk to them about it.
Yeah, so my daughter's only 3 years old, and I've already told her that because I just want her to be well equipped. I want her to know that there's a lot of good people in the world, but there's also some not so good people in this world. So I've told her, I've had that talk with her. If you ever see anybody else's vagina, their butt, anything that their bathing suits cover, their boobs, like, we don't want to see these things from strangers. And like, you can come and talk to mommy and daddy about these. So she's already aware that these things are out there, and she knows that she can come and talk to mom and dad. So I mean, I feel like have these conversations early. There's no shame in them. And if you start having them early, like I remember when I first had my daughter, and I would be embarrassed almost to say like vagina or boobs, because like we didn't talk about these things growing up, and I'm like, it's kind of weird. But the more I said it, it's like, oh, okay, now it's the new normal. I mean, she shortens the words and calls it gina or boom booms. It's so funny. I'm like, where do you come up with these things? But she knows the proper terminology. Those are just what she prefers to call it. So yeah, start these conversations soon. So 50% of kids are actually uncomfortable talking to their parents about sex. So how does the course, the Sex Talk, prepare parents to have these conversations with their kids when their kids are uncomfortable to talk about it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so the way that our course kind of addresses it is, because we do not take that prescriptive approach, you really gonna have to sense it out in your child. So in the course, we have an example where our expert Tanya is sharing how with her daughter, she started around the age of, I think it was 11, and she immediately sensed that her daughter was not ready. Now that does not mean that they didn't still, equip and protect them, and they didn't know the biological terms, but like kind of a deeper level of the sex talk, it just wasn't time yet. And so for parents, I think really with that statistic, what that bears out is you just need to, it's not just a one and done. You don't just go up to your 8-year-old and say, hey, I just want you to know you can always talk to me about sex. And then the second you've done that, you're good. As a parent, you're good to go. No, nothing in parenting is that simple, and neither is this. And so you just have to create that safe space where you can say, hey, if you ever feel uncomfortable about anything like that, you can come talk to me. They know the word penis, they know vagina, they know, at a very young age, another practical way is like we're changing my son's diaper, and we're already teaching him like, hey, only mommy and daddy can touch you here, and your daycare worker, right? Like, and again, because if that were to ever happen, we've given him the language to say somebody else touched me there.
Yes.
And
exactly.
so, yeah, I would say, just like everything else in life, we don't want to leave it up to our children to decide when they're ready. And as parents, we need to equip and protect them. And so, yeah, your child might not be ready until they're 13. They might be ready at 8, depending on their context. If they go to public school, they're going to be exposed. Nothing wrong with public school, but just the amount of other children that they're around that don't have great parents, like the people listening to this right now, you need to equip your children in that way. So yeah, I would say that statistic is probably coming out of that culture of shame and like, oh, we can't talk about this. It's not good, because we've never lived in a world, almost anyone listening right now has never lived in a world where talking about body parts, sex and sexuality and marriage in the home, like even I don't remember my parents ever talking about stuff like that. So we have to be the trendsetters with this. We have to begin to change that, because then I think we'll see that statistic shift.
Yeah, that's so good. And I just think that if the world is going to normalize porn, or if the world normalizes porn and sex, then we should normalize having those conversations in our house, So, okay. What would you say to parents who are okay with their teenagers watching porn? I asked this question because I grew up in a very worldly household. And for us, it was like we didn't really have the sex talk. It was more like, when you're ready to have sex, just let me know so I can at least get you a condom so you don't get pregnant, And that was the best my family knew how to do. They didn't grow up with any types of other, Christian morals or Christian background. And so for them, it's like pregnancy was the worst thing that could happen. So what would you say to those parents that are like, my kids watch porn, so what?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question. And I would say, right, like everything that we have learned now about pornography, even the secular world is beginning to acknowledge the damage and the dangers of pornography,
Hmm.
even if you don't come at it from a faith lens. Now, that doesn't mean that we come at it from that lens, but your Matt Fradd wrote The Porn Myth, and it's literally a anti-porn argument without appealing to religion in any
I
way.
love that.
And so, yeah, if someone's listening and they're curious about why porn is bad at all, I would recommend that they go buy The Porn Myth. It's
Yeah.
a very cheap book on Amazon, but in short, even if you are not a believer, we want to set our children up for success, and the objectification of the human body, treating bodies as flesh, it like when you go into marriage, if you've slept with 100 people, those things live with you, and you might be setting your child's future marriage up for failure. And so I would say if you're unsure and you maybe grew, because my wife grew up in a culture like that as well,
Hmm.
a lot of what we address on the sex talk as well is kind of like God's design around sex and sexuality. Why do we believe these things? Why is it bad or harmful for them to be consuming pornography, right? Even just one statistic in pornography where it's like the percentage of abuse, physical abuse that we see towards women in pornography is like off the charts. And then we
Yeah.
see teens and we see, like, and so it's pretty hard today to justify that pornography is good. We're seeing
Right.
Pornhub get shut
Yeah.
down. We're
Yeah.
seeing all of these lawsuits coming out. It's an exploitative, horrible industry
Yeah.
that does not have a good reputation. So I have found it
Mm.
harder and harder the longer that I do what I do for people to justify the goodness of pornography. And I would just encourage a parent who's a little unsure and maybe they grew up in a world where that was how they were taught to again change that, to
Yeah.
break the mold, to be different. And if you're still unsure, that's another thing we did with the sex talk is we made it so that you can get that whole education in
Yeah.
7 hours worth of content and very quickly, very easily, and then you'll be set up for success.
Yeah, I love that. And I was in the porn industry for 7 years, guys. So I can attest that it is not going to be beneficial to a child's mind, especially we're talking about children today. It's not beneficial to their mind. Like the things that I was paid to do, the abuse that I endured, it's really, really devastating. And I hear of, young girls having sexual experiences with their boyfriends and they run away never wanting to have sex again because the young boy learned that in porn that slapping and pulling hair and spitting and all of these aggressive, abusive things are normal. And so they try these things out on their girlfriend, not knowing any better. And so the girlfriend never wants to have sex again because she is now afraid and damaged and traumatized because of what was learned from porn. So yeah, you definitely want to have these talks with your children so that porn doesn't teach them that these things are acceptable, that these things are normal. Again, lovealwaysministries.com/the sex talk. And Nick, what would you say to the parent that their children's already been exposed to porn? What should they do?
Yeah, so the very last video in our course addresses that, and there is no easy answer for that. But the posture to take as a parent is that of a coach and a mentor to come alongside of your children. So there's a couple different scenarios, right? Like one thing is if you catch your child watching pornography, we address this in the course. We do not want you to immediately say, you are bad, you are wrong for consuming that. And again, Matt Fradd, he's one of my favorites in this course. He addresses that your posture should look a little bit more like, I'm sorry that you've been exposed to this and
Yeah,
that you were watching this.
yeah.
It on some level it was daddy's responsibility and he left you with the device that wasn't protected overnight in your room or whatever it is. And so as parents we need to take responsibility and again, if you are just now beginning this conversation and you have a 13-year-old, you have a 14-year-old and you start this conversation and you come to find out that your child might be addicted to pornography. What we would encourage is that you lean in, you begin from the point where you are, and they are going to be in this and on this path for a while. There's no like, oh, let's just eliminate it, all the devices, and all of a sudden they'll be better. You have to come alongside of them. And our ministry, provenministries.org, comes alongside of individuals in those situations. So we have 14 and 15-year-olds as young as that age that have gone through our curriculum. And so if you're a parent and your child is struggling or addicted, I would say just reach out for resources and help. There's no easy button, but there is freedom. But you can come alongside of them and to better to do that now than until they're 18, 19, 20 out of the home, because it will only get worse and it's not going to go away. And what our ministry does, like every day, for us, we hear stories of people that have been addicted for 30 plus years. Every day we hear of marriages where the husband's been addicted and consuming pornography the entire marriage. And so we as parents, if we do find that our children are struggling, now is the time to do that kind of work and reach out, because there's no easy button, but the Holy Spirit equips you and you can do this alongside of them. And your child just needs to know that they're not broken and that mom and dad are there for them to walk through this struggle.
Yes. Come on, mom and dad. You guys can do this. God has equipped you. He's equipping you through this course. You guys have everything that you need. God chose you to be the parents of your child. So you have everything that you need. And we are providing the tools for you today so that you can have these conversations with your children. Nick, can you share with us how our listeners can support you and where they can connect with you in the future?
Absolutely. So provenministries.org is where they can come check out our resources. And yeah, like you kind of mentioned earlier, we are honored to partner with lovealwaysministries.com, because if you put in /the sex talk, this course, thesextalk.com, we're just trying to get it into as many hands as possible. Like, I can imagine a world where I am worked out of a job because of this resource. What if we had a generation of kids who grew up having wonderful, awesome, healthy sex talks with their parents for 10 plus years, and that was the normal? How many less individuals would we have to pull out of the river downstream who are addicted to pornography? How many fewer broken marriages would we be finding today? So I would just say, if you're listening to this and you're a parent, share it with your friends. This is a generational, game-changing resource that we can see just shift our world. And maybe in 10 years, Brittni, we'll be having a conversation and that will be the world that we live in. And man, I would love to see that.
From your mouth to God's ears. Come on, Lord. If he can do it, if he could do it, he could do it. And I believe he can. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Let's Talk Purity podcast. We're so excited that you were here with us today. We hope and pray that this has blessed you. Nick, thank you for joining us today. We're so grateful for you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for creating this course. It's so needed, and I'm so excited for you parents to take this on and share it also with if you're not a parent today and you're still listening, share it with your friends who are parents. This course is so needed. lovealwaysministries.com/thesextalk. Take it on. We love you guys, and we will see you in 2 weeks. God bless you.
Hey family, Richard and Brittni here, and we're so excited to partner up with Proven Ministries to bring you the Sex Talk.
The Sex Talk is a course that is going to help you parents have the sex talk with your children. You know, in today's day and age with modern technology, sex, porn, it's everywhere. And your children are either going to learn about sex from pornography or from their friends at school, or they can learn about it from you. And you parents are the safe place. But we know that conversation can be awkward. Maybe it was awkward in your household with your parents, so you kind of don't want to have that conversation, or you just don't know how. And that's why we partnered with Proven Ministries, because we want to help you and we want to walk you through how to have the sex talk, how to talk about porn, what to do if your kids have already been exposed to porn or sex. And so we want to invite you to take on this course today. So thank you so much for considering this course. We know that it is going to greatly bless you and your family. So take on the sex talk today.
And you can check it out at lovealwaysministries.com/the
sex talk.